Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 14 of Monster. So, the last episode made me cry my eyes out, so that was that. I was not expecting to be teary-eyed this soon into this series, but here we are. So I was very, very happy with the last episode of Petra and Schumann. That may be my favorite episode so far of the series. Petra and Schumann was such a good episode. Like, I love that the stuff with Johann is great. And the stuff with Johann versus Tenma and kind of their growing, like, animosity towards each other, or really Tenma's growing desire to stop Johann. Johann, I don't think, cares. But this whole, like, side quest with Schumann and Petra in the last episode was just so wonderful. There was so much character development. It was so good. It just left me really, really excited to see what other side characters we're going to get in this series and what we end up doing with them, because obviously they're playing different roles as the story progresses. In the last episode, Schumann convinces Dieter to stay with Tenma, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, yes, Dieter seems to be the one tying Tenma to his humanity that could keep him from going and killing Johann and killing anyone, because it seems like Schumann didn't want that to happen. But on the other end, Dieter's a liability, and Johann could kill Dieter, and that would throw Tenma off the deep end. So do we really want that to happen? Lots of things to think about with this series, but I do have two comments before we begin. One is by HBanana7, who is talking about that there is like a generational wealth gap between East and West Germany, or at least one that they noticed when they visited Berlin recently. And I thought that was interesting. I have a fellow colleague that has been to Berlin before, but I don't know if something that they observed or not. That'd be something to ask them about. But I thought that comment was rather interesting, showing that even 20, 30 years later, it's still a thing that is around and a commentary that's worth being made. But also, K.A. from YouTube talked about, I thought this was the coolest thing, that one, Dieter is voiced by Yonko Takeuchi, who is the voice actor for, or voice actress, rather, it's a woman, that is the voice actress for Naruto, which Luffy's voice actor is a woman as well from One Piece. But Naruto's voice actor plays Dieter, and also plays, what I put on here, and also plays a young Sabo in One Piece. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that you have Naruto and young Sabo from One Piece, and their voice actor is the same one for Dieter. So I liked that. But what was more interesting is that child Johann, according to K.A., is voiced by the same voice actor as Atsushi from Bungo Stray Dogs and Minato from Tsurune. The only thing is, this was back in 2004, so this voice actor was only 10 or 11 years old. Like right now, the voice actor for Atsushi is like 29, I think, and back then they were only like 10 years old. And they were just a child voice actor that voiced young Johann. It's not a voice actress. It's not somebody pretending to be young. It was actually a legit child voicing that character. And I instantly thought of the English dub for Full Metal Alchemist, because there's an English voice actor that played Alphonse, Al, and he was like 11 or 12 years old playing that character. So I thought that was really cool. I'm like, kudos. And I love that they're still voice acting after all those years. I'm like, that's crazy. But also, it adds to the creep factor, because you have Johann's voice actor as a kid being a legit kid. It adds a little bit to the creepiness. Just a wee bit, right? Just a wee bit. But I thought those comments were really good, so thank you for making those. But I could not wait after watching Petra and Schumann. I just needed to know what happens next, because Monster's kind of addictive like that, right? So yeah, I just needed to know. And thus, that's what we're going to find out. So I hope y'all are ready. I'm curious to see what we get out of this episode, because Petra and Schumann's episode seemed to end one point. Tenma says he's going after Johann, going to kill a man. Maybe Dieter can stop him. So we're going to start Monster episode 14, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's see what happens, y'all. I'm feeling some Werthers were really appropriate after this. Oh my God! What was this episode? What? We didn't see Tenma at all this episode. We didn't see Tenma one bit. Didn't see him a lick except in presence, in picture only, but we just witnessed the deconstruction of two very lonely people, Lunge and Eva Heinemann. Like their entire deconstruction. And it's the craziest damn thing. I feel like I need to go through this episode and be like, what the hell happened? Because Eva's it's tragic and it's awful and it's self-destructive, but then Lunge's is just bizarre. Like, Lunge is a much more bizarre character than I think I gave him credit for. And I'm like, what is happening? So we need to go through this and just see, like, how this is all going down. So we have Lunge that we're going to put here. And we have Eva that we're going to put there. Okay? And just these two characters, because what the hell? Oh my god. I might do Eva's and then Lunge in blue. As I like right over it. We might do that. Just get the blue in there. Make it look extra weird. But oh my god. What the hell? So we need to go through this episode and talk about this. So obviously we have established, right, that Lunge is persistent. He is a persistent character. He will go time and time again to try to unsolve the case. And so as Boltzmann's secretary was like, Boltzmann would never have relations with a prostitute. Like they're basically, nor did he murder one. He's not involved. Right? If you'll please leave, I'll take action if you're persistent, which he is. And then, so the thing about this is too, and I'm going to put this like out to the corner in the purple, is that like thematic elements here, right? The use of the shadows. Like we have Lunge in the shadows. Lunge is featured primarily in the shadows there. And then the idea of the crosses. We have those tying in with Eva. Oh my gosh. Their characters in this episode. Holy cow. He says, take action. Are you going to sue for defamation? And then asks him, no, you're his secretary. You wouldn't do that. It would be bad if Mr. Boltzmann's name would come up in this case, wouldn't it? So the thing about Lunge that's so interesting is that he acknowledges he's not doing this for justice. No, it's a little bit, it's not for justice. Not for justice, just to find the truth. That's why he's doing everything. He doesn't care about the means in which he does things. He just wants to get down and dirty in the truth. Because the one guy suspects, he's like, you're making accusations. You're making accusations that are unfounded. He's like, you don't know this for a fact. Why would you say that? And honestly, what it reminds me of is, I'm going to say Death Note spoilers for the next 30 seconds. But in Death Note, there is the character L that is very much driven by his own sense of justice, right? He does things by the books. He wants total proof. He wants evidence. Everything has to fit the societal mold of justice and be sought out in that way. His successor, Nier, does not believe that at all. Nier is, I said Lunge is like L. No, Lunge is like Nier. Because Nier's whole thing was, well, if I have a hunch about something, I want to pursue it. And we're going to seek out the truth. And if we make some assumptions and we're wrong, all we have to do is apologize. And that's it. He's not really in it for the justice system or anything like that. And I feel like Lunge is the same way. He's just trying to find the truth and solve the puzzle, solve the case. And he does so very unemotionally. So I feel like Lunge is much more similar to Nier than he is an L in this case. But end of Death Note spoilers, right? But that's so fascinating. And yeah, the one guy's like, are you threatening me? And he says, no, I just want to know the truth. I'm like, oh. And then we get the OP. All right, so we need to get past this OP here. Oh my God. So yeah, so the one guy says he's pretty tough, and the idea is left behind. So this episode being called Left Behind talking both about Eva and Lunge and how they've been left by others, right? And the effect that it has had on them. So we get the idea that Boltzmann is a big politician. And the one guy's his secretary. And Lunge is like, I just need to keep pressuring him. Do you think that Boltzmann would lay his hands on a prostitute? And he said the victim was not an ordinary prostitute. She had countless politicians and businessmen traced back to her. But only one person who saw her at the hotel that Boltzmann was staying at. And so then the one guy calls out, he's like, the information's kind of questionable. Can we really trust it? Like, there's not really any hardcore proof of why we should believe that. And he's like, have you deciphered her client list? And I like that they're like the codes enumerated in the floppy disk. For those of you under the age of 30, a floppy disk, if you have no clue, is this little icon that you see, you know, on your computer screen when you go to save something that looks like a little floppy disk. Yeah. It was really tedious. Could not hold a lot of information on it. And it was a very, very outdated piece of technology rather quickly. But in the 90s, they were everywhere. I had floppy disks. It was like before the flash drive, before the jump drive, there was the floppy disk. I had one when I was like in junior high to save stuff on. They're pretty much obsolete, right? And rightfully so. But he's like, give me the floppy. I feel like that's Lunge's, give me the floppy. It seems like a really weird sex act. Give me the floppy. Which, honestly, Lunge has a very attractive pair of eyes. When you get the close-up on his eyes, he is really attractive. But, damn. Give me the floppy. He almost made the husbando bracket. Lunge was almost there, y'all. After this episode, he maybe should have been, but what the hell? He says, aren't you busy with other cases? And he's just like, it doesn't matter. He's like, I'll multitask. Give me the floppy. So yeah, so basically he's been multitasking multiple cases, right? That's what he's been getting down and dirty doing. Saying, I can handle it, let me do it. And he's like, okay. He's like, I wanted to ask you earlier, but he's like, when do you sleep? And he's like, what does that have to do with the case? Like, he's a very private person, right? He's very private. And we're going to get into his family here very shortly and how he's so not in tune with any of them. An irrational question. I was like, what a funny man. And then we cut to this big, nice home with all the photos. And there's the woman and the daughter at the dinner table. There's a third chair for him, but there's no food there. He's not eating. He's not at his desk. So he has this like big house and has a wife and daughter. Like he has a family right there. But he, like Tenma, is married to his work. To the point where he completely ignores that they exist. And so in this nice house, in this kitchen, it's like, when are you going to talk to him about that? It doesn't matter when we tell him. He never listens to us. But you should do it as soon as possible. She says, you're talking too loud. He's in his room. Oh, how unusual. And she looks like him. Like the daughter has his eyes. She has like his face shape and his eyes. She looks very much like him. She's really pretty. But yeah, the family says he never listens. Never listens to them. Like he's so out of touch. And he's on his computer there. Decoding. Deciphering the list. Ignoring his family. Meanwhile, we go back to the BKA, where Lunge, it's like, you're still investigating Boltzmann's link with the prostitute murder. And he's like, is there a problem with that? And he's like, yes, there is a problem. I'm being pressured by officials from the Ministry of the Interior. So, interestingly enough, I want to put like a little thing about Tenma here, because Tenma's kind of in the middle of all this. And that Lunge is kind of similar to Tenma, in that they were both kind of married or devoted to their work, but also that they kind of have almost like a self-righteous duty to their profession. Like, just like how Tenma was being told by the director to only treat certain people, and he was like, no, I'm a doctor, I'm going to treat whoever I wanted to. In Lunge's case, he's like, I'm going to solve whatever case. I don't care who's involved. And the guy is like, look, we're being pressured by the Ministry of Interior. They want us to drop the case. You should drop this high profile thing. And Lunge's like, no, I treat all cases equally. And it's like, it's the same thing as Tenma, right? Which is a shame that he's trying to like find Tenma to kill him. And he's like, I can't back you up in this. And he says, do something about it. And just leaves him. What'll happen if this investigation was a mistake? He says, you had a wonderful career until now. There's no need to be eager for success now. Or is it something else? Are you doing this in the name of justice? And he says, it's not for success or justice. I have no interest in either. A woman was killed. I'm only interested in the culprit. I just want to solve the case. Yeah. So just like Tenma, it's not success, but like this sense of duty or finding the truth. But just like with Tenma, the one guy's like, hey, you need to stop this or you're going to be in a bit of trouble. And Lunge's like, nah, I'm going to keep doing it. Not going to listen to you, basically. Oh my God. And he just keeps walking on. And goes back to deciphering the list, right? I find it funny the list is called John. And then this poor side character who keeps bringing in all the visitors and follows him, his like right-hand man here. He's got like the big bouffant hairdo. And in comes Eva Heinemann, right? She comes in and he's like, I deciphered the client list. I can convert all the names. And he's like, yeah, that's cool, Lunge. I'm glad you're doing that. But that woman's back here, Eva Heinemann. And he's like, oh, you can't come in here. And then she shows up and she's blushed because she's still drinking and she's drunk, right? And she goes there like right before the gardener shows up. So if we're timing this right, she shows up with Lunge before the gardener, which poor gardener conversation. Or maybe not poor gardener because it seems to work out for him. But poor him when he shows up to work the next day. But yeah, she's like, when will Tenma be arrested? And you see, he's like, oh, well, you've been drinking a lot. And she's like, how could I not be drinking? And he says he's already solved it. And she's like, oh, he says that it was all the work of a man called Johann. But Johann is one of his personalities. So this begs this big question, which we've been rambling about for like the last 10 episodes. And I've been talking about like for going back all this. We're going to bring this back up. Lunge believes that Johann is a personality of Tenma. But we know that's not the case. We know that Johann does exist. That he is Nita's twin brother. That he was at the orphanage. That wasn't Tenma. That was a legit person that existed and still exists. And we know he's been causing the murders. That he killed Junkers. This show is wanting to mess with our brains and make us kind of think, well, like, is Lunge correct? But he's not. There's no way. There's no way that he can be correct. Johann is real. And Eva has the proof, right? Eva has the evidence of Johann's existence. And I'm amazed that Lunge hasn't researched further. But it seems like as soon as he gets to a conclusion that he is satisfied with, that's when he just drops it. He's like, okay, well, yep, nope, Johann is a personality. Case solved. Don't need to research it any further. And it's like, no, you do. And I'm surprised he hasn't, because he would have found that evidence. But what the hell? What the hell, Lunge? And Eva's like, oh, if you think about it that way, everything that seemingly illogical case is explained logically. No, that's not the answer, though. That's not the truth. It's so baffling to me that he says that, oh, well, that illogical case makes sense if we just apply this answer. Problem solved. But I'm like, that's not the solution. That's not right. I'm like, Lunge, what are you doing? And Eva doesn't correct him. All that's left is for the police to capture him. And she's like, does that mean that your job is over once you've got a warrant? He's like, there are a lot of things I'd like to talk to him about in person. I'm like, I bet. And I bet he'd be like, no, Johan's real. You're mistaken, sir. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm amazed. Tenma is a very interesting person. Like, yeah, you two are quite similar, actually. But also, he's not making Johan up. Johan is not part of his personality. I was halfway joking several episodes ago when I said that. I was joking, y'all. I wasn't being serious. But this show makes you question it. It makes you question what's reality and what isn't. And Lunge's not helping, right? He says, but the cases I need to tend to are piling up on my desk. And so I have other things to work on other than this one. He's like, I'd love to talk to Tenma in person, but till I get him arrested, I've got other things to do. And then the secretary is like, no, Mr. Boltzmann had an alibi. And he's like, that was the work of a pro. And he says, then what? What are you trying to say? That Boltzmann hired a professional hitman? Well, no, it was the secretary that hired him. And he's like, I deciphered the client list of the woman that was killed. And the secretary's like, are you kidding? And the councilman's name was on it. And they're like, well, that's not enough for a motive for murder. It's got to be more than that. And he says, right. Come to think about it, that's about it. And he's like, I don't have time for this. I'm going to go. And that's when he brings up. And so the assistant is like, see, wasn't enough proof to get him. We tried, but it didn't work out. Darn the luck. And then Lunge, he comes in saying, do you know about Shellhorn, the publishing company? And he says they're a company that stays in business by publishing tell-all books about famous people. It plays dirty. He's like, they hire deceitful women to form relationships with famous people and have them write about their arrangements. And Boltzmann was one of them. He's like, you should be careful. But then we go back to his home, right? And when his daughter's like throwing up in the sink, right? As she throws up, opens the door, and sees him walk by. So it's like this man that sees, that derives all these conclusions and sees all this, he ignores his daughter's like morning sickness. He ignores his wife's affair. It's like the truth of their relationship is right in front of him. And he doesn't see it. He can't see it. Like she ignores. And she opens up the door thinking he'll ask her about it. And he doesn't. And she's like, okay. I see how it is. And so then we have the guys playing chess. And Lunge's like, quit playing silly games. And the guys are talking about him being superhuman. And they're like, no, he's not superhuman, but he may not be human. And he's like, oh yeah, it would be checkmate if I moved it over there. And then they see Lunge. He's like, don't waste your minds on silly games. The publishing company's president confessed after I startled him a little. Get the report. So yeah, so this all gets brought up. Right? And, oh my God. It just gets bonkers from here, y'all. Because the secretary is like, he says, I found all the information that would basically accuse Boltzmann. And the framing of this shot, the windowsill, with all the shadows, it's just like all the symbolism we've seen so far with the crosses and the shadows are shown with Lunge and Eva in this, right? It's a prostitute's notebook. Our secret meetings are written here in detail. He's like, I don't know the man's name, but it starts with a B. It's pretty obvious. And we see a guy that hired a professional hitman. We can connect the dots. Like, he basically solves the case. And then when he goes home, he sees his family ready to leave. And he just looks at them. And she says, we're leaving. And he just looks at her like, he says, Father, you didn't notice that I was pregnant, did you? And he says, are you going to the father of your baby? And the mom's like, I'm going with her. And you didn't notice I was having an affair, did you? And Lunge, it's like the daughter, all he cares about, all he asks is if she's going to the father of the baby. And they say yes. And say they're leaving. And then Lunge, he just turns around. He takes the call. Saying it's the secretary. And then he'll tell him everything. Come over that way. And the thing about is that the daughter and the wife, they look at him like, are you serious? You're going to leave. Like, your wife and daughter are leaving you. They are going away. Packed up everything. They're leaving you all alone. Are you going to do anything to stop them from leaving? And instead, he chooses to leave and pursue the case. So there's this interesting connection between him and Eva. In that both him and Eva, they have opportunities. They have opportunities to fix their lives and loneliness. And they choose not to. They choose not to, right? Because, now, for Eva, we'll talk about her situation because it is a little bit different. But in Lunge's case, he had every opportunity to say no to that case that he wasn't supposed to be on, right? And go with his wife and daughter to fix their relationship. But he actively, just leaves them and chooses not to. He doesn't even think about it. He just goes. He just, gets his coat back on and says, I'm going out. Tell me the details later. Ignores both of them. And ends up alone. And then we cut over to the secretary's house where they say that he's basically killed himself. Go back here. Where they say inspector. That he killed himself. And that's when... And then that's when the secretary's letter gets to the main guy in the office saying Mr. Boltzmann is innocent. The message he left behind. And so the director basically says, yeah, you pushed the secretary into a corner and he killed himself in this high profile case that didn't have to happen. And so he says, I'm going to pass this case on over to Inspector Kaminsky. And then the Riker Park and President Gallon murder as well. Both of those cases. And then Lunge says, what do I have left then? And the guy just looks up at him like, dude, you are a brilliant man, but you don't get it. You don't have anything left. And Lunge looks so innocent when he looks at him. When he looks back at him, there's this innocent sparkle in his eye. He doesn't quite understand what's happening in this moment. And it's like, are you freaking kidding me? And he says, He says, I no longer have anything for you. And Lunge he looks, that look in his eye is like the girl in episode 9. His look is just so innocent and just blank. He's just like, what do you mean you have nothing for me? That was all the cases. And everybody just looks over at him like, dude, come on. And Lunge doesn't even acknowledge them. He goes back to his desk. And there's nothing there. Everything's been taken away. And he sees the photo in the desk drawer that he has left. The photo of Tenma. And it says, you're all I have now. Oh my God. So all he has left All he has left. All that is left for Lunge is the case of Tenma. So basically, he's going to go free agent. Freelance. He's going to go freelance and try to track Tenma down. Oh my God. But yeah, that is half the episode, is just establishing Lunge where he's at. I imagine this is a chapter in the manga where we get all this stuff with Lunge, and the one guy's like, yeah, the Eva woman has come back. And he's like, hey, let her in. So then we have poor Eva, or rather, poor Eva's gardener as well. And so we have the gardener. And I want to establish the gardener a little bit. That the gardener, his wife has left him. He seems to have a crush on Eva and likes to please her with his gardening. And the thing that's sad about it is that you see her like leaving these men and letting them go away. And she doesn't want anybody to cling next to her, right? Because Eva is avoiding a relationship, right? It's almost like she's punishing the men that she sees, because like this one guy is married, and it's almost like she's punishing him because she sends him away with the handkerchief and like knows that he's gonna get caught by his spouse, and she like puts extra perfume on it so that he won't come back. It's like she just wants to hit it and quit it and everything. But then the gardener shows up and he's a decent guy, and she kind of ruins it until she doesn't ruin it, and then she ruins it. So it's like, oh my God, Eva. But the gardener, he kind of gets, blushy around her. And Eva is pretty in this episode. She wears some really revealing outfits. But I mean, girl, if you got it, flaunt it. And she mocks that one man because she says he's a superficial man. And she wants something real. And I'm like, that gardener could have been real, girl. He could have been real. He seemed like he loved you. He liked you at least. What the hell? And I like that she says that the garden is the only place. She's like, I forget about the things I hate when I gaze into the garden. So the garden is this form of, this garden is so that she can forget Tenma and what she hates. And then at the end, she burns it. Being like, nope, I'm just going to be fully focused on my hatred of Tenma now. There's that. Oh my God. And so the gardener, she like basically tells him, she's like, do you have the confidence to make me happy? And he's like, yeah, sure. Like, he seems like a pretty decent guy. And then we go home where he is like with his daughter, and their mom has left and the mother has left, and his cooking is like not the best. But he tries to basically ask his daughter if he likes somebody, what would you do? And the little girl seems like she's carved right out of Eva's behind. So I'm kind of sad they didn't get to meet, because I feel like Eva and that little girl would have gone off without a hitch. They would have been like, nope, we're on board the same plane. Or maybe they would have hated each other. Maybe it is a good thing they didn't meet. But like, he's telling his daughter Coletta that he's like, well, I might like somebody, but then he gets all blushy and kind of backs away from it. Which is kind of sad, because it's like, the dad doesn't want to intrude on the daughter's feelings, because it's like bringing somebody new when he's separated from his wife. But then like, he wants the daughter's approval too. So it's kind of like a tricky situation. And the girl kind of passes it off being like, oh, you're being weird, Dad. But man, Eva showing up like in this skimpy outfit to watch him change light bulbs. Like, girl, do you just walk around this? When I'm like at home walking around, I'm like in pajamas or like in a comfy hoodie or something. I don't walk around in like a jumper waiting for people to show up. And she asks him out to dinner. He says that he would do anything for her. And she's like, fine, then come to dinner with me. And so he does. And bless his heart, I feel so bad for this man, because it's like, he's a nice, genuine guy and thinks that he's going to get on this woman's good side. And I'm like, honey, she's a bit deranged. She is a bit off her rocker at this point. Right? And he's so nervous when they have dinner together. And he's like, I'm not used to expensive restaurants like this. And she's like, if you want to be a man worthy of me, you have to be confident wherever you go. So she makes the comment that Tenma was the only one worthy of her. That he was confident wherever he went. And I'm sorry I'm very coughy. I still got this cough from this cold. It's like the one thing that has lingered is this awful cough. But she's like, just like when you're working in your garden. And he's like, well, that's right. Because honestly, working in your garden requires precision. It requires care and dedication. It's similar to practicing medicine, not as elaborate or intricate, but it still has the same principles surrounding it, right? And he says, I have confidence when I'm in my garden, kind of like when Tenma's doing surgery. He has confidence in himself, right? So there is a connection there. He's like, I'm happy when I complete a garden I envisioned, kind of like Tenma performing a surgery. He's like, I like it best when I'm there. People who like gardens can't be bad people. And he said that you said you liked a garden. And she goes, oh, does that mean I'm a good person? And he says, yes, of course. And she laughs at that because she does not think she's a good person. She believes she is rotten. She does not believe she's good, right? She finds it funny that he even suggests that that's a possibility. He says, you seem sad, like you're alone. And she's like, well, so do you. And he's like, yeah. He's like, she's like, you seem like you were sad too. And they kind of find this mutual point. And it's like, it's that moment at the dinner table where she's like, well, you seem sad too. And he's like, well, so do you. And they just kind of look at each other like, are we doing this? We're doing this. And so they do. They have sex. And I feel bad for him because, I'm sure he was really nice to her. And then it's the ultimate insult that he was nice to her, went home to see his daughter, wasn't just leaving her for no reason. He had a reason. He left his kid at home alone. And the one thing he hears is her saying the name Tenma. He hears her say Kenzo. Like she's still hung up on Tenma and can't let him go. And bless him, he wraps up. He kind of gets the drift, right? And so it's almost Christmas at this time. So I don't know how that factors into the timeline where we're at, because it was summer when Tenma left. So it's been some time, right? But I'm not sure how much time. We're not sure what the timeline is at this point. But he's basically with Coletta talking about getting stuff together. And he goes back and sees the photos on the desk of Tenma and her. And sees him as a young man when his hair was all clean. And you could tell he's not happy because he's like, he likes this woman, but he knows that she's still hung up on the man she was formerly engaged to. Because otherwise, why have the photos? Why keep them all this time? And then she shows up drinking. His name is Kenzo Tenma, my ex-fiance. And he's like, are you drinking at this time of day? And she's like, of course. And then we find out that she just went to go see Lunge and he turned her away, right? And he's like, arrest? But, and she's like, he's responsible for killing my father, which we know is a lie, and she knows is a lie. And she knows that he didn't kill her dad. He says he was framed, but who's he trying to fool? I was promised as the daughter of the director of a large hospital, and my 3 failed marriages are also his fault. So it's but they're not, right? So she's trying to push blame. She is pushing blame onto Tenma, but it's Tenma is not responsible for your failed marriages. You are. You're just trying to pin something on him, right? And again, the light shining through, the shadows, the crosses, the windowsill, everything. It's just, oh my God. It's so much. And she says, how can he say that's Johan's doing? She says, look, that kid is my father is Johan. Do you think this child could kill my father? I'm like, yes, actually, yes. And also, you know that Johan's real. And that's when the gardener brings it up. He's like, well, wait a minute. Is that what Tenma says? She's like, it's a stupid excuse. He's like, well, did you show that photo to the police? She says, of course not. And he says it could be important evidence. And she says Tenma is the one who did it. Tenma has a split personality, so Lunge says. Which, here's the thing, right? In this episode, we're kind of establishing the idea of split personalities. This whole thing about split personalities kind of applies to all three of them. It applies to Lunge, who is this brilliant detective who seemingly is super intelligent and superhuman, but he can't function in a normal home with a wife and daughter. Then you have Eva, who seems like she's this really confident, rich woman, but she's incredibly sad and lonely and desperate, right? And then you have Tenma, who we think has a split personality, that he's this dedicated doctor or he's a murderer. So it's this concept that we have these two personalities. And again, it kind of goes back to the monster in the ED, that you have the monster that splits in half and one becomes this one personality and one becomes another maybe, and they're tied together that way. So it's kind of fascinating, the conversation about personalities that are dealt in this episode. And then the gardener says, well, then if you hate this man, why do you keep pictures framed of him? He's like, in the depths of your heart, you think he's innocent. And you still have feelings for him. And Eva, she's just like, well, you watch too many soap operas. And here's the moment. She's like, the only man who was worthy of me was him. And he listened to every request and said, yes, yes, yes. He was a man who always said yes. He was supposed to make me the happiest in the world. And then the gardener's like, could I take his place? And honestly, this is the saddest part of the episode. For me, it's the saddest part because it's like, you have a choice, Eva. She could have so said yes. That gardener could have taken his place. He could have been a yes man just like Tenma for her and given her what she wanted. And she just tosses him aside and says, oh, you just think that because we had sex once, huh? And she totally dismisses him. And it's the saddest thing in the world because that man genuinely liked her, was a nice guy, could have made her happy. And she totally just dismissed him and called him a fool. And the sad thing is that as he's walking out, he says, you're really a lonely person. But he understands what that feels like. And he tells her, he's like, I'm having a Christmas party. Change your mind, you can come. And I don't think he expected her to come, but he was just being nice and offering it. And if she had just shown up sooner, right? If she had not been so awful, then what happens when she finally does decide to go wouldn't have happened, because he makes this big dinner and everything. And who shows up unexpectedly? I thought it was going to be Eva at the door. I thought the little girl was going to be really disappointed and be like, oh, you're not my mom. Who are you? And it was going to be this big thing. But then it becomes this big thing because it was the mom showing up and she gives him a second chance. And meanwhile, Eva had the present that she got for him. And so this is the cruelty of it all, right? You had Tenma with the gift for Junkers, and he was not able to give. And then you have Eva with the gift that she's unable to give because the man got back with the wife. And the problem is that Eva never once asked him what the deal was. She didn't ask him about his own life. So when she looks into the window and sees him with the family, with the wife and daughter, she doesn't realize that this is all like an inconvenient, circumstance. She doesn't realize he was alone and the wife came back. She thinks that this genuine gardener that got her fancy, that she kind of fell for maybe a little bit, she thinks that he was deceiving her. She thinks he was no different than the guy she saw at the beginning of the episode where she gave him the perfume handkerchief. She thinks he's no different. She's like, all of you men are the same. And you all wreck everything about me. Tenma was the only one good, and now he's gone, and you all are just the same. And when she smashes that present, like you see her, she looks so soft and so happy in that one moment. And then you see her go to the window, see them together like that, and it's all just ruined. And he's like gotten over her and moved back with his family. And she's just like, nope. That's the end. And she's so mad. And there's that cross in between, like, of the shadow in her face. Oh my God. It's insane. And then the wind blows and she sets fire to the garden. Saying, who cares about mimosas? Who cares about roses? Who cares about beautiful gardens? Who cares about the residence of the ex-director of a large hotel? Let everything burn. Everything. And she just leaves the house with her jacket and the crosses on the windowsill and her bag. Her big ass bag. And that's when she goes and finds Lunge. And he says, welcome. And she says, you see me finally want to listen to me. And of course he's like, oh, I haven't had my hands free. My schedule freed up since I'm basically fired. And she says, this is the only man for me. If I don't kill him, I can never be happy. And so that's the irony of this whole thing, is that now we have this cycle, right? Where we have Lunge just wants to convict Tenma because he's fascinated, right? Tenma wants to kill Johan. Or let me phrase it this way. He just wants to convict Tenma, right? And then Eva wants to arrest or kill Tenma, right? So then you have this weird situation where you have Eva saying that she has to kill Tenma to be happy. But then you have Tenma who says he has to kill Johan to be, I mean, we could say happy or satisfied or to gain any sense of normalcy back in his life. You have both Eva and Tenma who claim that they have to get rid of this one person in order to be satisfied and able to live on with the rest of their lives. And for Tenma, it's Johan. For Eva, it's Tenma. So now we have Lunge, who has no other cases, is going to be looking for Tenma. We have Tenma who's out to kill a man. We have Eva who is out to get Tenma. And it's this big old thing. And then Dieter is in the middle of this. No! So, and then we don't even know about Nina. So now the OP, you have Lunge and Eva working together to go after Tenma, who's with Dieter. And he's after Johan, who's connected to Nina. Why? Why is it like this? Oh my God. But just the idea that these characters, if they just made different decisions, it could alter their entire life. But they're not doing that. What do we do with that? Oh my God. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous, y'all. So yeah. I'm sorry I coughed for a lot of this. It bugs me in the reaction that I coughed, but hopefully my cold will be cleared up by next week. But oh my God. It just makes my throat really dry right now. But this episode was absolute madness. It was bonkers. And I don't know what to do with it. And now I'm just on the edge of my seat being like, and I'm not watching the previews, so I have no clue what's coming up next. Don't spoil me. But oh my God. What do we do, y'all? I'm here. I've been missing Lunge this whole time, and now he's come back full force. His whole character, oh my God. And then Eva. this episode is insanity. And I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. So I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. Holy cow, but I can't wait to hear your comments. But we'll be back next week with episode 15 of Monsters. Stay safe and have a good week, y'all. Bye.